Memory transcription subject, Captain Cal Sim, Crocodile Alliance Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 17, 2136. Dry air buffeted my face as we disembarked amidst tall grass. The shuttle crash was bound to attract attention from the humans. I imagined this place would be swarming with troops if it was anywhere near a military base. We had no idea where we were, or how many predators were in the area. My breaths were strained as the three of us hauled Thion's body across a savanna. Sparse trees dotted the vast plain, and a few beasts roamed the landscape. None of the orange predators zeroed in on us, but they were definitely something to avoid. I couldn't see any bipedal human shapes, but it was a matter of time before we ran into one. It's much easier to fly than to walk. We need to find some place to leave Thion. A place to shelter and to sleep would be nice. On our left, a bank of clay and sediment led down to a small pond. I was thirsty, but given that there were more bright-colored predators bathing in it, I'd stick to our rations. With how tired I was, I didn't feel up to exterminating any threats now. This place is infested with predators. Only a few artificial structures, Zarn grunted. I studied the doctor's grimace. I don't think humans cull their predator population at all. This is what happens when you don't have extermination officers. Can you imagine living on a planet like this? What an uncivilized world. This alien hellscape could be host to all kinds of nightmarish murder beasts. The vicious creatures around us had lean, nimble forms and fangs that put the sapient primates to shame. Most humans were unlikely to set up shop in predator territory. It could be a very long walk to civilization from this wilderness. After a brief pause, we began the laborious trek toward the far-off tree line. The expanse seemed to stretch for kilometers, with no sign of the nearest settlement. This region's heat was punishing, making me want to collapse in a puddle. No wonder the human's fur had evolved away. We need to put this dead weight down. This farcical intruder is going to get us all killed. Jayla spat. I glared at her. I don't leave my crew members to die. There's wild monstrosities everywhere, and the humans could do anything if they stumble across him. So what? The rations would be better spent on people who can walk and fight. Lives are not trading chips, Jayla. Haven't you killed enough people today? I'll leave Thion when there's an appropriate spot, hidden and secure. A cave, or any kind of cover, would be a welcome sight. There was no locale devoid of predators to stash Thion. Leaving him in the open, to be gnawed on by a cast of beasts, wasn't an option. It was unclear how much energy any of us had left. Our flock might have to camp among the demons soon. I was relieved to spot a breaking point in the grass. There was an uneven dirt path, which had faint vehicle marks in its silt. That meant Terran did stray to this region. From the safety of a metal cage, at least we could communicate with human predators. An isolated one could be threatened into giving us supplies or shelter. Zarn looked to me with watering eyes. Cal Sim, Captain. The TAC-10 doctor heaved some strained breaths, and placed Thion on the ground. He bent over, trying to catch his breath. Fear was swelling in his amber gaze. The realization that we were stuck on Earth, amidst livid humans, was settling in. Humans have definitely visited this place. Jayla scanned the red arch in front of us, with the prototype visual translator. The writing says Ranthambore Tiger Reserve. I'm guessing those orange predators are Ranthambore tigers. Alarm awakened my senses. Reserve, you say, like an area set aside for a specific purpose. The humans intended for this predator growth to happen, Jayla? I think so. That is peculiar. Why would they want rival, stronger hunters on the loose? Even the sociopath seemed stumped by my question. Such animals were not conducive to modern living. Maybe the humans wanted whatever prey the tigers prioritized for themselves and snatched it away from them once the hard work was finished. It didn't make sense. There were much easier ways to feed their hunger than by stealing from ferocious fiends. I was certain a species with guns could hunt without assistance. They like the chaos and the violence, Zarn panted. This human war tribe could want to keep out dangerous visitors, especially their own kind. We might be in the most vicious nation on the planet. I didn't know what the truth was, but I was going to assume it wasn't anywhere close to that. The doctor lacked crucial understanding about humans. Their society was too structured for a state entity to stoke chaos intentionally. It must be something more philosophical in nature. Given how many galactic religions were organized against predators, it could be that Terrans saw hunters as deities. The crocodile's farming goddess, Inatala, brought plants to the universe to feed her children. Predators were considered a perversion of her natural order, who turned to Malthus, the god of violence, out of greed. Our reality was the eternal struggle of good and evil. I strayed from the faith once I became an extermination officer. The priesthood had a way of twisting the goddess' teachings, none of it matched with their written beliefs. Malthus wasn't an inhibitor of empathy, but merely an agent of destruction. We had seen that predators were violent and greedy, while not without some positive qualities. I think this is some kind of worship center, I decided. Maybe somewhere to pray surrounded by carnage, for hunting success. Or for the expansion of war. Jayla chuckled. A religion devoted to bloodshed? How interesting. It is interesting, actually. This is why I wanted to preserve their culture, because we understand their kind so little. We've become enthralled with violence and killing ourselves, in trying to be pure. The doctor curled his lip. A brutal race doesn't deserve any legacy for their culture. I'm enthralled with the punishment of the wicked, not killing itself. Your motives are rich with hatred. It poisons you, I hissed. Now, let's get moving, before the sun finishes setting. The group hobbled away from the reserve in uneasy silence. There was no telling where the road led, or what animalistic carnage lay ahead. A more spiritual crocodile would see this as a temptation by Inatala. I had never intended to get up close and personal with human territory. Our mission was supposed to be impassive, distant. This is a test to my soul, regardless of divine presence. We must face Earth's horrors, without surrendering our values. As we progressed past a clump of trees, my hearing detected a faint sniffling. It was accompanied by sporadic gasps, so I figured it must be a predator crying. Jayla cued in on the sound as well, and drew her sidearm. The female crocodile looked eager to kill or mock the beast. Sympathy tugged at my heart, and perhaps a bit of regret. If a human was mourning the devastation we caused, what right did we have to disturb it? Something told me I was outvoted though, so I raised my weapon. The flesh-eaters were too dangerous to leave on the prowl, while we were out in the open. If a single extermination was necessary to safeguard my people, so be it. I gestured to set the injured Farsal on the grass. Zarn, watch over Thyon, and alert us if any other predators are approaching. I can't wait to see your extermination skills in action, the doctor chuckled. Jayla clicked her beak. His skills? Calcium is soft on the humans. But don't worry, I'm going to crack its skull. I expect you to be as silent as possible. We don't want it to know we're there, until we have it cornered. Also, let me ascertain some information before you off it. What if I want to scare it? The sociopath drawled. The human is not in a stable state of mind now. It could go into a fit of rage on a whim. Let's not push our luck, we just need its shelter. The female crocodile curled her neck in disdain, but took cautious hops forward. My feet glided across the leaves, and I took care to avoid any twigs. A fabric dome, supported by stakes in the earth, was established amidst a clearing. A single human was stretched out on a blanket. It appeared to be watching videos on a handheld device. Terror swelled in my chest as my instincts urged me not to approach. The feeling subsided upon drawing closer. Secondary observations swayed my emotions. This primate was of a lesser stature than indicated in Noah's data dump. Its skin seemed untouched by aging, and its register lacked the booming growl of males we had spoken to. If I had to hazard a guess, this human was an adolescent. Perhaps it was crying because it lost its parents. That would explain why it was alone and had wandered to predator-infested territory. My thoughts began racing with unpleasant images. It took a great deal of effort to push them away. I stopped a few paces from its blanket, put the electronic device down, and slid it to me. Don't even try to alert any fellow beasts. The human startled and pointed its tear-stained eyes at me. Its lips parted with alarm. It flung the device toward me like it burned to the touch. Video footage was still playing on the screen as predator anchors described the loss of life in a city called Bengaluru. I wondered if that was the kid's home. Please, take whatever you want. Just leave me alone, it whined. That begging was rather unbecoming of a predator. Maybe it hadn't become desensitized to bloodshed yet. I focused my gun barrel, careful not to keep my grip too close to the trigger. We just want to talk, I lied. What's your name? The beast swallowed. Arjun. And your age? You don't look like a human adult. I'm 12. We're not grown-ups till we turn 18. Jayla traced her gun barrel across its furless chin, snickering as it shied away. The fear in its gaze twisted my heart. The little beast still had years left of adolescence. It looked harmless, helpless, even. I knew that was deceiving, but it still had an effect. Little predators become big predators and reproduce exponentially, my mentor's voice said in my head. I stared at the shaking primate. Hey, eyes on me, Arjun. Why are you out here? Dad thought it was a good place to hide. He said you wouldn't target the parks first, Arjun croaked. If this is the end of the world, we could spend the last day outdoors. Together. All right. I know humans care for their children. Where is your father now? My dad is a wildlife photographer. He wanted to get some animal shots with the space battle overhead. It'd be a damn good picture, if you survive. The predator bobbed its head emphatically, and more tears streamed down its face. The kid's distress was apparent. It would be merciful if I limited the scope of my questions. I didn't want to prolong its suffering. Jayla couldn't be allowed to botch the job or make a mess. Gosh, what if there was a way to curb a human's full-grown instincts? Pulling the trigger on Arjun, that extermination broke my heart already. It would grow into something terrible, but now, it was innocent. It wanted its father. I struggled to steady my voice. You're doing great. Can you just tell me what this place is? We were curious about the predatory wildlife. National parks are like an animal sanctuary. We preserve species that are threatened or have lost their natural habitats. Why? Those orange tigers are menaces. They'd eat children like you. Tigers don't bother you unless you bother them. They're majestic animals. Lots of people tour this place, and there's resorts, campsites, hiking. Disbelief flooded my veins at the idea that humans wanted to stay in such a dangerous venue. To think that the locals went out of their way to preserve monsters. Arjun's tone had been reverent, but not religious. Did predators find thrills in challenging superior counterparts? I cleared my throat. Thanks. That's all we need. Finally, the talking is over. So I can kill it? Jayla trilled. Well, its binocular eyes pleaded with me. No. I helped you. I stared at the colorful leaves on the ground, avoiding its gaze. The reds and oranges reminded me of a raging inferno, sparking across a pool of gasoline. The little pups squealed through it all, and their frail silhouettes writhed in agony. I felt like I was watching my handiwork from the truck bed again. When they looked at you with those big eyes, you wanted to help. But you didn't. You wouldn't. I couldn't help but feel that our mission had been wrong. The thoughts of how the predators tugged at my talons, playfully, was still a vibrant memory. Looking at Arjun, it was impossible not to recall that first extermination. Younglings didn't deserve merciless death. Captain Kalsim? Jayla squawked. I blinked. Leave the predator alive. It's not a threat. Not a threat? Zarn's voice made me startle, as I found him looming over my shoulder. It's an offshoot of flesh-eating barbarians. What kind of extermination officer are you? Doctor, I told you to wait with Thion. Well, I was worried you'd do exactly this, predator lover. Jayla, you don't have to listen to him. Kill that thing. Arjun was curled up into a ball, shielding its head with an elbow. The female crocodile's eyes twitched, and I could sense her temptation. I had to reel in the rebellious sadists, before I lost control. Admitting my actions were born from sympathy would be suicide. I'm no predator lover. How dare you? I roared, shoving my beak in Zarn's face. I'm a skilled extermination officer, while you're someone who sits on the sidelines. Talk is easy. The doctor stiffened. You just said. That thing is the only bargaining chip we have. Humans value their children, so keeping it as a prisoner is the logical choice. Maybe we can make them trade us a spaceship. Food. Medicine, you arrogant fool. The tack-can gulped nervously, and slunk back a few steps. He stole a glance at Arjun, before swishing his tail in defeat. Jayla also scrutinized my enraged form. I met her stare for several seconds, goading her on. She lowered her weapon. Using their kids against them. As a shield, maybe. I like it. I knew you would. I exhaled a silent breath of relief, and turned to the doctor. Sedate this human, Zarn, like you did with Marcel. Adjust for weight. I need sleep, and I can't watch a ravenous predator. The tack-can nodded, and filled a syringe with a light sedative dose. I watched which vial he grabbed, making sure he wasn't loading it with poison. The physician handed it over to me for administration. A quick jab plunged the needle into the human's neck. Hopefully it was only a light pinch. It should knock Arjun out for a few hours. When I was rested and able to think again, I would be able to deal with the predator. There was no telling how long it would act obedient. The greater challenge would be restraining my companions from tormenting the child. We'd failed to eradicate the Earthlings, and its continued survival was simply an admission of failure. There was no reason for a stranded crew to dole out needless death. Memory transcription subject, Captain Sovlin, Federation Fleet Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 18, 2136. The UN fleet deposited me in a cell on Venmal Prime, and without warning, the predators stopped visiting me altogether. Based on the claw tallies on the wall, I calculated that it had been at least a week. The Venlo guards were colder than the humans. One of them spit in my evening gruel, and muttered a curse against my depraved soul. Against all odds, I found myself missing Carlos and even Samantha. I kept busy by contemplating the Arxers' interrogation, and how to refute their absurd story. There had to be reconciliation between the Terrans and the Federation. It had required an unthinkable cost, but the Gojid government was swayed to the humans' corner. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Pyri's death was confirmed by UN ground forces. Her final transmission could only achieve so much. I offered to bargain with the Federation for them, but then, the humans abandoned me. They're just gone, I mused aloud. If I strained on my hind legs, I could peer between out the window to the capital below. Venlo Prime was a massive planet that dwarfed the likes of Earth and the Cradle. By comparison, it had a shorter orbit and slightly higher gravity than the average world. Interestingly, much of its landmass was inhospitable. Sunlight never touched half of its surface, leaving it too cold for plant and animal life. Its bright side had the opposite problem, too scorching hot to sustain water sources. There was only the thin space between extremes to build settlements. Venlo scientists searched for new ways to push the frontiers, with various methods to cool their planet. They manipulated atmospheric reflectivity with aerosols, built an artificial upwelling system in their ocean, and used cloud seeding to generate rainfall. It took colossal effort to keep the gears in motion. Not all species are blessed with a perfect home. If it weren't for sentiment, Venlo colonies are much more conducive to habitation. The sight of human predators walking about became more frequent over the past few days. Many Venlo would give them a wide berth or cross to the other side of the street. I wondered why Earth was suddenly sending so many people abroad. Such a widespread presence was a lot to ask of their friends. A pointed cough came from the other side of the cell door. Enjoying the view? Looks like you've had plenty of time to study the intricacies of Venlo society. I whirled around to see Samantha, with her auburn hair tied back in a knot. Her predatory eyes were unfocused, as though her mind was elsewhere. The anger in her voice bore a colder aspect than last time I saw her. My instincts pronounced her demeanor as highly threatening. Was there something I had done to infuriate the humans? Or worse, were they becoming corrupted by the Arxer? Hello, Sam. I thought you guys had forgotten about me, I answered. She bared her pearly fangs, eyes dilating in a flash. My friends call me Sam. You're not my friend. Right. Sorry. That you should be. Bootsteps sounded behind Samantha, and I breathed a sigh of relief as I recognized Carlos. For a moment, I thought the female had snuck in alone to assault me. Everything about her stance screamed that she was thirsty for blood. Maybe it was simply not seeing a human in days, but I felt there was some substance to my inference. There was a jingling sound as the male guard slid keys into the door. The spark was gone from his brown eyes, and his subdued mannerisms were uncharacteristic. The last time I saw Carlos, he was ribbing me and striking down my thoughts at every turn. There was no sign of playful mockery or admonishment now. My spines bristled in alarm. What happened to you both? Something is wrong. Carlos gave me a weary frown. Earth was attacked by the Federation. Over 1 billion dead. Don't pretend like you care. You got what you wanted, Sovlan, Samantha growled. Horror washed over me, and I sank back onto my bed. No wonder the humans were upset. I remembered what it felt like to watch the cradle burn, to grapple with the loss of my home and culture. Why did the Federation have to piss off the only species to defeat the Arxer? There was a time where I wanted to cripple the Predator's breeding grounds. That derogative terminology still rang in my ears. When I turned myself into UN custody, I was expecting to witness a brutal society. Instead, Earth amounted to decent people going about their daily existences. It was a structured planet, rich in life and culture. That's not what I want now. I nibbled at my claws with anxiety and tried to keep my expression submissive. I'm sorry for your loss. I know what it's like to be in your paws. Samantha clenched her fists. Of course you do. You caused your world's death while trying to kill us. Just like the crocodile. You're right. We brought it on ourselves, and I know that. We were horrible to humans, more so than any apology could ever excuse. Yet you showed mercy and compassion. Fuck mercy. The rest of our fleet went home. But we get tethered to you, while Earth is under siege. How is that fair? It's not, but I have no say in that. I can see you're hurting. If it makes you feel better to quarrel with me, then I encourage you to do so. Samantha turned her back in disgust. There was no way for me to offer amends that would satisfy her. All the same, my concern for her mental health was escalating. I knew how grief could swallow a person without a proper outlet. I cast an inquisitive stare toward Carlos, looking for direction. The male guard's nostrils flared with pent-up frustration. Had the humans only visited to extol their anger on me? I'm glad you're both okay, I added, breaking the icy silence. I hope some of Earth was able to hold out. Carlos nodded. We drove them off, with help. Help? From the Venlo? Sure. And other interested parties. That is a vague descriptor. Who else would have come to rescue humanity? Carlos waved for me to follow him, and the absence of his snarl was striking. It was like the guards had received a personality transplant. Both seemed infused with hatred and impassivity, though one was directing it at me more than the other. I was frightened of what their predatory emotions could compel them to do. Dark thoughts raced through my mind, as I tried to recall why I trusted these predators. Their heroism on the cattle ship seemed a distant memory. My eyes widened in alarm at consideration of the rescued. That reminded me of the Gojids on Earth, cared for outside a large metropolis. What happened to the Gojid refugees? I blurted. I'm sorry if that's selfish, but I have to know. The male guard sighed. The primary camp was brought to Venlo Prime when we started moving human evacuees. Most are safe. That is positive news. How many humans did you evacuate from Earth? Millions. We've known the Venlo all of 3 months. Some people preferred to ride it out in a bunker, or were banking on us to rout their forces. Stop talking to that racist, delusional prick like he's your pal. Samantha spat. Carlos, I thought we had this conversation. The olive-skinned human crossed his arms. I'm being civil. There's a difference. Not wanting to sow more division between the duo, I kept my other questions to myself. That did explain why the human presence had increased rapidly. The cynical part of me wondered if the predator influx resulted in a spike in crime. The primates posed an extraordinary threat when they were angry, and they had to be more prone to deviant behavior than Venlo. Carlos led the way past native wardens, and we stepped out into the capital's crisp air. The guard's strides seemed a bit strained from gravitational exertion. The difference on Venlo Prime wasn't enough to be significant, but the humans would tire quicker in physical activities. It was another reminder that they weren't home. A pair of Gojids were waiting by a spacecraft outside, joined by several UN personnel. My eyes widened as I realized why they were familiar. It was the deaf youth, Talpin, and his sister, Berna. Both seemed to be in better spirits than the last time I saw them, and were carrying necessities. I can't believe I thought the humans were going to kill the kid, first time I saw him. We all shared that thought. Hello, Captain Savlin. A synthesized voice spoke the words in the Gojid tongue, but with a bit of human growl. Talpin must have been given an AI program with Terran phonemes installed. Why are you being kept in a prison? You are a hero to us all. The young Gojid finished sliding his claws across a keyboard, and fixed me with an expectant look. I didn't want to recount my crimes in detail, then again. I wasn't sure how to begin translating my reply. At least Samantha seemed mollified by Talpin's presence. Perhaps it served as a reminder of her deaf brother. I deserve to be there. I made another person, a human, suffer, I muttered. Talpin turned his pupils to a nearby human, and scanned the contortions of their fingers. His eyes widened. The adolescent struggled to believe that I could be involved with anything nefarious. His beige claws hovered over the keyboard for a moment, before he typed out a reply. "Why?" came the synthesized question. "Your deeds are spoken of in legend. You are a hero, a righteous man. You save lives." I lowered my gaze. "I'm none of those things. I thought causing a predator pain would fix my problems." Berna appeared stunned as well. "You sound like you're talking about torture, Sovlin. That's vile. The humans are sweet, sensitive, generous." I blinked in agreement, lowering my gaze. The predators beside Talpin projected fondness toward him, but I could see their jaws tightening as they listened to me. At least if Berna spread the word about Marcel, my people would squash the myth of my heroism. I deserved to have my legacy tarnished, and to be remembered for the sum of my crimes. Talpin tapped at his keyboard. "How could the humans treat you so kindly?" "I don't know. Ask them," I answered. The UN volunteer beside him thought for a moment, before launching into an emphatic reply. The human translator seemed passionate about whatever she was conveying. The deaf Gojid looked impressed at what was passed on, and nodded in acceptance. He shot me a disdainful look. I cast a nervous glance at Samantha. "You speak sign language. What did she tell him?" The guard flashed her teeth. "That you deserve to live with what you've done. That human discipline doesn't stoop to your level." Well, that was a recurring sentiment when predators spoke of me. What I didn't understand was why the guards brought me to meet Talpin and Berna. It looked like the two Gojids were about to depart on a spaceship. After my disclosure, I doubted they'd want a send-off from me. "I don't want to travel anywhere with him." Talpin waved his claws emphatically at the predators. "Not if he tortured a human. He is a disgrace to our kind." Berna curled her lip. "I second the notion. We both owe humanity our lives." My confusion intensified, and I shot Carlos a questioning look. Talpin seemed to think I was accompanying them on a trip, but I didn't have an inkling what he was referring to. Where were the humans taking them? Was I actually involved? Sovlin is the perfect person to pass on several messages for us. He can get you two through the door with those Kolshan bastards. The male guard tossed his shoulders in a noncommittal gesture. He's also the one some Federation fuckwits might believe about the Gojid refugees and the war. That was a good omen if the humans still wanted peace and dialogue. Maybe the attack on Earth hadn't completely pushed them to the Arxer side, as improbable as that seemed. These Terran predators had a merciful side, and I hoped we could appeal to that. It didn't sound like the entirety of the Federation was involved. The neutrals had minded their own business. There had to be some people that could convert to Terran advocacy. Other races didn't have to end up like the Gojids. Warmth filled my chest. A messenger? I'd be happy to testify on your behalf, and broker peace with your enemies. I know about remediation. Samantha scowled. Peace is not an option anymore. Frankly, I'd declare war on all of the skeptics now, but we can't fight 300 species at once. At least, not yet. We're going to purge the 24 who attacked us, followed by the 14 others who voted for war. What? That's the message? I gasped. Carlos shook his head. No, I'll get to that in a minute. Firstly, we need someone who can look into several items for us. Read this. We had it printed in your tongue, extra special for you, the female guard sneered. My shaking claws accepted the pamphlet, terrified at what the predators had inscribed. The paper nearly slipped from my grasp at once, mournful tears pooled in my eyes. Riesel was dead, killed by his own government for siding with humanity. I had mentored the Kolshan since he was a child, and shepherded his development. His advice on the bridge, combined with his honor, was steadfast. I wanted him commanding my ship in my absence. It pained me that our last interactions were him viewing me as a monster. My vision burned, and I dabbed at the wetness with my fur. The humans wanted to uncover why the Kolshians would resort to murder. It was unclear whether any future violence was planned against pro-human factions, but the Predators weren't taking threats lightly. Not after Earth. The Terrans don't want species reaching out with false friendship. They want anyone who plots against them exposed. Humiliated. Why would the scholarly Commonwealth be so opposed to humanity's diplomatic outreach? I was itching to demand Chief Nikonos' reasons for myself. He came across as a fair leader, reasonable to a fault. I would have considered him the kind who would give Predators a fair shake. Look into the Kolshian matter for us, and find documentation of first contact with the Arxer. See what you can dig up, Carlos growled. Samantha crossed her arms. We need to know who's complicit in every scheme against us and our allies. Who is worth sparing, who started this Predator hatred and why? The male guard narrowed his eyes. Our governments believe that you feel remorse, that you're not a flight risk. This is what we need from you, Sovlan. Okay. And the message? I stammered. You implied there was a statement to deliver. Oh, that's easy. Tell the Federation we're done contacting or negotiating with them. They never raised a finger to stop the attack on Earth. Let the neutrals know that they either reach out to condemn this terrorist act, or they can prepare for total war. That message sent a chill through my blood. The other Gojits looked horrified as well. I needed to find a more tactful way of phrasing that flagrant threat. If there was to be peace with any species, the humans could rack up a lot of collateral damage in seeking revenge for their Earth. Memory transcription subject, UN Secretary-General Elias Meyer. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 18, 2136. There was something uncivilized stirring in my soul, as heartbreaking images flooded in from Earth. Seeing historic cities pounded into rubble, and hearing tales of incalculable devastation was a gut-wrenching blow. It had been a mere 3 months since the first contact mission. In that span, 25 species had taken concrete actions to genocide human civilians, without the slightest provocation. Grappling with my own actions, my own failure weighed heavily upon me. I was responsible for mankind's future, and I hadn't used every option at our disposal. What if there was something else I could have done? Was I a coward for abandoning Earth, especially to bargain with the metaphorical devil? It would take years to rebuild our homeworld. 112 bombs had detonated on its surface, churning up contaminants and killing more than 1 billion. Reversing the atmospheric pollution would be a gruesome challenge, and we would witness more casualties in the aftermath. Strange how it wasn't humans who leveled our planet. I always thought it would be us who were our undoing. Elias? We're docking at the luxury resort on Titan Station in 60 seconds. Dr. Kemper, the current Secretary of Alien Affairs, tapped my shoulder. Are you going to be up to this? You look unwell. My first thought was always diplomacy in the past. Brutal warfare was something that I thought best relegated to our ancestors. It should feel monstrous for a pacifist leader to long to see our enemies' worlds desolated down to their cores. But now, I couldn't see myself restraining the generals. Their path seemed the only way. I craved the Federation's destruction as an organization. Regardless of the understanding that a small percentage were involved in the attack, their bigotry was incompatible with our survival. How many species had aided us? A mere 2, excluding the Arxer's unexpected arrival. The Xerulians were the only new race I cared to bargain with in the aftermath. The words of friendship other diplomats spoke proved to be empty. None of them backed us when it came down to it. The bystanders felt every bit as sinister as the crocodile and their pals in this moment. Your head has to be in this, Elias, no matter how impossible that is, Kemper said gently. We can't afford any mishaps when 10,000 Arxer ships are still in the Sol system. I met her eyes. I never meant for them to come here. This wasn't what. The Greys already knew where Earth was, you couldn't have known that. For what it's worth, they did save our asses. Staving off my self-pity, my thoughts returned to the urgent matters at hand. The Arxer decimated the crocodile strike force with an excess of arrivals. It was concerning that the reptiles had so many vessels in this sector. Chief Hunter Isif kept his fleet in orbit to protect us from secondary attacks, but I couldn't help but to think they were scrutinizing us. The unpleasant reality was that the reptiles could plunder or conquer Earth now, if they wanted. We were vulnerable, and the heavy losses left military defenses sparse. The Dominion's philosophy was still reprehensible to me, a far cry from the UN's modicum of equality. However, at this point, we had to keep the Arxer sated at all costs. So when Isif requested an audience with me by name, I chartered the first ship I could find off Venlil Prime. Governor Tarva, bless her heart, squeaked out an offer to join me, but I wasn't going to place her in the line of fire. The Arxer hunter understood our inability to accommodate him on Earth. He agreed to wait in Titan's travel lodging for my arrival. I don't like rolling out the red carpet for someone who called the Venlil a delicacy and referred to Tarva as dinner. I'd like to punch him in the nose for saying that. Kemper, do you think that the Arxer are capable of societal change? I asked, as our ship completed its landing protocol. If, let's say, they had a stable, non-sapient food source. The former SETI employee tilted her head. I don't know. The Greys weren't always like this, but they altered their gene pool. I don't know if they still have art. Whether they indulge in empathy. That is the mystery. By the way, can you set up a comms link with the Zerulean fleet in 15 minutes? We have some damage control on that front. I'll do that, after I hear that you're all right, from your own lips. You need to hear yourself say it. I am fine. Once these alien visitors are handled, it's time to bring every government together. Then, to rally the people behind our banner, and remind them not to give up. My shoes clicked on the decadent marble floor, and the crystal overhang reflected the colors of the rainbow from above. A glass viewport stretched the length of the lobby, complete with interactive holograms and exquisite telescopes. I observed a surreal view of Saturn as I passed the vacated concierge desk. This was considered the nicest hotel in space. For the sake of Earth's survivors, I hoped the Arxer agreed. I felt awkward approaching the suite given to Isif. There was no question that the reptile could snap me in half with his jaws, if he desired. Given the aggressivity the Arxer were prone to, and how they detested weakness, this was gambling with my welfare. But with humanity's precarious position, someone had to pacify the baby killers. I rapped my knuckles against the door. Hello? My voice couldn't have sounded more uncertain, and I cursed my nerves. The door creaked open, a pair of slit pupils surveyed me from the pitch-black interior. Isif didn't have any lights on, which added to my unease. He towered over me by at least 1.5 feet, showing teeth longer than my finger. The alien's tongue flittered. Elias Meyer. 2 names, yes. We meet in person, come in. I clasped both hands behind my back, and attempted to keep my strides even. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed 3 other Arxer scattered about the living room. It was a safe assumption that they were advisors, servants, or military personnel. Perhaps it was a mistake to come alone, or even conveyed that I lacked support. Thanks for your military assistance, I croaked, pawing at my dry throat. I'm sorry, do you have any water nearby? Isif tossed a water bottle at me, and I barely reacted in time to catch it. The liquid was lukewarm, but I chugged it with gratitude. The Greys seemed to be dissecting my every move, like a specimen under a microscope. There was never a plan for formal first contact with the Arxer. I wasn't sure where to begin. We were supposed to be using the Greys to get the crocodile off our back. Now, Would you like our assistance with rescue efforts? Human command indicated that your ground residents may react poorly to us walking the streets, Isif growled. I scratched my head in discomfort. I suggest asking each nation specifically. I'm sure some would accept the offer, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you. From us all, the people of Earth are in your debt end. The Arxer curled his lip. Hey, relax. You've gone through a lot, human. Don't worry about offending us, I prefer honesty. Right. Well, many people did not have a favorable view of your species prior to this. Myself included. I don't imagine that will change overnight, especially with xenophobia abounding. Isif's eyes glittered in the darkness, narrowing to the point that they were hardly open. His nostrils flared, and he seemed to meditate on a scent for a second. His grin intensified. I wondered if he could smell my nervousness. The chief hunter's gaze moved to the holopad clipped to my belt. We wish to access your system's internet, the reptile continued, in a polite rumble. My scientists here requested documentation of your hunting and domestication, specifically. It would also answer if your research is remotely professional. I nodded. All right. Though we're quite different types of predators, I have no issue with sharing those search results. My holopad made its way into my hands, and I punched the keyword domestication into a search engine. An online encyclopedia article popped up as the top result, which should be sufficient. Unless I deemed it a necessity, I was going to try to conceal our persistence hunting ancestry. It might make the Arxer view us as a serious threat, due to our ability to weather a war of attrition. Isif snatched the device from my grip. The hunter must be quite eager to learn about us. I wasn't sure whether that was a positive sign or not. Perhaps the Dominion was assessing whether we shared their child-munching fervor. They could also be checking if we were on board with culling our weaker population. Had I just tipped them off by admitting our disdain for them? Fascinating. So humans did use animals for labor and livestock purposes, like us, he murmured. However, you keep pets too. Lesser beings coddled for entertainment and companionship, in return for emotional benefits to their owners. This is a normal practice. Yes. This behavior is derived from a pack predator's social needs, I would presume. And you care for these pets like they are part of your tribe, I assume? Usually. Many humans struggle with living alone. An opposite to how we tire of company in swift fashion. Your affinity for the Venmal stems from this pet category, does it not? It took a great effort to refrain from a reflexive denial. I would never classify sapient beings, especially our friends, as animalistic playthings. But if the Arxer could view the Venmal as mere pets, that would be an upgrade to cattle consideration. It might make the reptiles willing to facilitate the release of the Venmal captives. Remember, the Greys might require a predatory basis to accept our claims. Whatever concessions must be made to stall, to convince them we're on the same side, just do it. Yes. Humans love adopting companion animals, I grumbled. Isif glared at his advisors. Satisfied about the Venmal? I told you that humans are just social predators, and those animals are a misapplication of their evolution. An Arxer scientist coughed uneasily. Humans are the first documented pack predator sapients, sir. It was reasonable to ask why. You're dismissed. Wander until you are summoned, so that Elias Meyer and I may talk in private. There are discussion matters that are above your clearance level. The reptilian subordinates swished their tails and slunk off in obedience. Isif watched them depart, exhaling a hearty sigh. He pressed my holopad back into my hands and searched my gaze with his own. There was a certain trepidation in his dark orbs. He waited in silence for a full minute, clearly apprehensive of prying ears. I studied the alien's mannerisms with curiosity. Was the chief hunter expecting mutiny from his own ranks? How disciplined was Arxer command? Something told me his private divulgence would be enlightening as to what he expected from humanity. "I'm sure you intend for Earth to repay your assistance with some form of compensation," I said. Isif bared his fangs. "Oh, you will, Elias Meyer, but not today. In the future." I don't follow. "The fact is, you don't like that we keep the prey sapients as food. That is your entire issue with us. It violates your moral code." "I'm not blind." This commander could not realize we had backed the Federation with full-throated support. We didn't want the Dominion classing the UN as an enemy now. I tried to maintain my best poker face, though the Arxer seemed to see through my neutral expression. My silence must have confirmed his suspicions, but what could I say? I shrugged. "We're different. Humans, well. You haven't bred out your empathetic people. I thought you could help us attain an alternative food source." Isif's voice was hardly more than a whisper, and he looked jumpy. "That is why I sent our entire sector fleet to your aid. My species could have a better future, someday, with your guidance. Beyond war and cruelty." "What? A week ago, you gave me a speech about what a delicacy the Venlil are. Called our beloved ally dinner," I hissed. The reptile sighed. "Tarva had some spunk, for prey, actually. Don't be unreasonable. I was recording that transmission in front of my crew, and also sending it home. I like my head attached to my body, human." My eyes widened. It wasn't a shock that the Arxer Dominion executed anyone who spoke out against their policies. However, it was encouraging news if some high-ranking officers didn't toe the party line. None of our captives saw any issue with the atrocities. They had boasted about how sophisticated their ideology was. Cattle ships could be stocked with the true believers. Not the best sample size, I suppose. "So you don't support your race's farming practices?" I pressed. A growl rumbled in Isif's throat. "I'd prefer food that doesn't talk. This war has gone on long enough, and your allies have shown me that some of them could accept predators. If we're reduced to our animal instincts, we're no different than the Federation." "I concur on the instincts." "Fine, I'll bite. Why are you telling me this?" "So that you understand that I'm on your side, and you'll be more forthcoming with the future compensation. If you don't push your luck, I might be able to bargain for the release of more friends." That was enough to pique my interest. Liberating any captive Zeruleans might make them a bit more forgiving of our Arxer saviors. Humanity had to reward the teddy bears for their fealty somehow. They sent aid without any history between our worlds. It also meant that Isif might follow through with the Venlil deal. I still clung to the hope that one day, we could end all sapient farms. No matter what the Federation had done to our two species, eating and torturing children wasn't the answer. Downplaying or excusing atrocities wasn't going to bring back London or Los Angeles. Mankind was better than that. I cracked my knuckles. "How on earth are you going to sell mercy to your government?" "Simple, not phrasing it as treasonous a mercy," Isif chuckled. "Just stating it as reclaiming the farming glory of our ancestors. Talking about how simple prey breed quicker. I work within the powers that be." Clever thinking. I'll do what I can to uphold our bargain, though our production capacity is limited now. Human, I'm understanding. Rational. Don't starve your people for this Venlil deal. What's important is that we're allies in the long run. This Arxer wasn't a feral creature that saw hunting as life's sole joy. There was an empathetic capability in his concern for human life, and that weariness of the war he was born into. He projected an aura of sincerity, in contrast to their reputation. That was more than I saw in the crocodile and their ilk. I wondered what this predator race would have been, without outside interference. Thanks, Isif. If you are certain you can control your people, I'll find amenable places for you to direct your assistance, I whispered. Humor flashed in his eyes. Anything for a friend. Though I presume you don't want me to share our food stash. I hesitated. Actually, if you have extra herbivore feed, it might be edible to us. We're omnivores. You are leaf lickers. Duly noted. I'll see what I can do. This encounter went better than I anticipated, but unpleasantries were still ahead with the Zerolian call. Even if Isif had given us grounds to work with. A Federation and Arxer confrontation was a powder keg. I didn't want it going off in the Sol system. Humanity had to find a way to smooth the ruffled fur and keep two polar opposite species on our side.